Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel R Academy. Subscribe my channel if you're not subscribed at and tap on bell icon for more videos. So guys, in today's video we will discuss about tax planning relates to residential status, income from salary, income from house property, capital gains and income from other sources. In residential status, we will discuss about how can a non-resident can avoid his tax burden on his income. That is, how can he save his tax in India on his income, and in income from salary, what the deductions, what are the exemptions, the terms or the contents of salary we will discuss, and income from house property in capital gains and income from other sources we will discuss about how can an individual save his incidence of tax. So guys, let's start the video. Tax planning relates into residential status. Before going to know what are the plans should be taken to reduce the tax, first we should know how can an individual becomes the resident of India. A resident taxpayer is an individual who satisfies any one of the following conditions. When an individual satisfies any one of these two basic conditions, he can be considered as a resident of India. They are: resides in India for a minimum of 182 days in a year. That an individual should stay in India for 182 days in the previous year. And the second one is resided in India for a minimum of 365 days in the immediately preceding 4 years, and for a minimum of 60 days in the current financial year. That is, an individual should be in India for 365 days immediately preceding 4 years. That is, when now the assessment year is 2021-22. An individual should be in India for 365 days in 4 years in 2020-21, 2019-20, 18-19 and in 17-18. In these 4 preceding years, he should be in India for 365 days. Minimum he should be in India for 365 days. And in current financial year, that is our in previous year, he should be 60 days in the India. Then he can be called as resident of India. And the tax plans for non-residents, how can they save their tax when they visit India? Plans to avoid a tax burden for a non-resident when he comes to India are: when an Indian citizen or a foreign citizen of Indian origin staying outside India comes to visit India in the previous year, he can stay in India for not more than 181 days. That is, he should not be in India for more than 181 days in the previous year. So guys, when an Indian citizen or foreign citizen of Indian origin means a person of Indian origin, birth of India, who are born in India, or descent or origin who lives outside the Republic of India. According to Ministry of External Affairs report, there are 36 million non-resident Indians and person of Indian origins residing outside India. That means when a person is called as Indian origin, who lived outside India and whose descendants or who took birth in India or whose spouse are in India, we can call as Indian origin. And the tax plan is he should not more than 181 days in the previous year. That he should leave India before completing 181 days in the previous year. That's the first basic condition can't be fulfilled, and he remains a non-resident. And the next one is, if individual in India for more than 364 days during the preceding 4 years, then he should avoid staying in India for more than 59 days in the year. Here guys, already here, when the individual in India already he stayed 364 days in preceding 4 years, but he wants to consider as a non-resident, then he have to leave India before completing 60 days, before staying 60 days in the previous year. Then the second basic condition can't be fulfilled, and he can be remained as non-resident Indian. For example, he may come after 2nd February and leave before 29th May, so that not more than 59 days period is covered in both years. Similarly, Indian citizen or person of Indian origin should plan their trip such that not more than 181 days will fall in the 1 year. Of course, guys, it is a first basic condition that should not complete 181 days, should not be in India for more than 181 days in the previous year. A non-resident should not receive any income directly in India. When he gets income, he should not receive any income directly in India, even if the business is controlled directly from India. This tax plan is, even though the business is controlled directly from India, a person should not have to receive the income directly from India. When he receives directly from India in India, it becomes taxable, and so hence he should first receive income outside India and then remit it to India. By such a way, no tax is leviable on such income. And next one is, similarly, a non-resident should receive his income outside India, which is earned outside India, and from a business controlled outside India. So he should be considered as a non-resident. He should not do any kind of activities that can be considered, or that the income which he gets should become taxable when he stays in India. He have to do the transactions outside India so that he can be called as non-resident. So guys, these are some plans to consider as a non-resident when a non-resident to individual. While computing the stay period, this is about the computation of staying period of the individual to calculate or to know whether he become the resident or non-resident of India. That is, while computing the stay period in India, the day of arrival and the day of departure both are taken into consideration. When he arrives India and when leaves India, both are taken into consideration. In this concept, the date on stamp on passport is considered as a valid proof. The proof for which we have to compute his stay period, that is, the valid proof is date on stamp on passport, and that should be take care when the edge of the exemption limit. And the next one is not taxable in case of a resident should receive income outside India, then remit to India. We already discussed before that he should not receive income directly in India. First, he have to remit outside. He have to receive outside India and then remit to India, so that he can save his tax. He can save his tax and avoid tax burden, and he can be considered as a non-resident Indian. And the next one comes tax planning relating to income from salary. How an individual can save his tax incidence from salary income. Here in salary, basic terms are advance salary, perquisites, allowances like DRA, HRA, and leave travel allowances, leave travel concessions, medical allowances, reimbursement of medical expenses, monetary and non-monetary benefits. These are the contents of salary and the plans to save tax under the head income from salary. Let's start to discuss. First, take in advance salary. When an employee wants a lump sum amount or in advance, and he wants to receive the salary in advance when there is a need to him, an employee should avoid taking advance salary as it is taxable on receipt basis and may increase the incidence of tax. Of course, whether the salary is received at in advance or at the end of the month, it is taxable income, and on receipt basis it becomes taxable. And instead, so that to avoid this tax, to save the tax, instead of receiving as a advance salary, an employee may pursue to give loan adjustable against it. He have to demand for loan again, a loan, so that he had to ask for loan rather than the advance salary. However, such loan should not be exceeds 20,000 to avoid chargeable of interest. And the next one is tax advantages from the components of your salary. From the components of salary like HRA, leave allowance, medical expenses, what are the advantages can be taken from those? Some components in your salary structure have provision of exemptions and deductions under the Income Tax Act. The perks, perquisites, or tangible benefits that you entitled to can be claimed up to some amount or as deduction or is exempt in some cases. Some of the perquisites or allowances or tangible benefits are claimed up to some amount of deduction or are exempted from the tax. Few of them are discussed below. First one is house rent allowance. If you are staying in rented accommodation and paying rent, then you can claim exemption with respect to house rent allowance under section 10 subsection 13a. If an individual or salaried person is staying in a house and paying rent under section 10 subsection 13a, we can claim exemption with respect to the house rent allowance. And the calculation is made to for the exemption limit is, we have to consider list of these followings. First one is actual HRA received, what the HRA is actually received, and then the excess of rent paid over the 10% of salary or 40% of salary, and in case of metropolitan areas 50% of salary. In these three we have to consider which is the less and that is exempted from tax. And the next one is education allowances. In education allowances received for education up to 100 per month, that is 1200 per year, up to maximum of 2 children, and hostel stays of employees children up to 300 per month, up to maximum of 2 children from the employer can be claimed under section 10 subsection 14. If an employee's children are staying in hostel, they get rupees 300 per month of 2 children, or when they are not hostelates, they can claim their allowances, so they can claim deduction for rupees 100 per month up to maximum of 2 children. And in case of leave travel allowances, under this 2 trips in a block of 4 years. In 4 years, 2 trips are exempted. That is exemption limit where journey is performed by air. In case of an individual or an employee travels through air, airfare of economy class by the shortest route, or the amount spent, the airfare of economic class at the shortest route, or amount spent by the employee, whichever less is can be claimed. And exemption limit where journey is performed by rail. In case the employee is traveling through rail, air conditioned first class rail fare by the shortest route, or the amount spent, whichever is less, get exempted. And the next one is investment in deductible options. When a salaried person makes investments on some areas like life insurance, provident funds, and then on that type he can claim deductions and also get reduction in tax. Section 80C states the most useful option to maximize take home salary and lower down tax payout. Section 80C states most useful option that individual can maximize home salary, can take salary and lower down the tax payout. It offers as much as rupees 1,50,000 in terms of tax benefit that can reduce tax outgo by rupees 45,000 for assessee in 30% tax bracket when calculated without surcharge and cess. And when an individual spends on life insurance and employee provident fund expenses like life insurance premium paid and contribution to employee provident fund, school fees can be claimed under 80C. You can claim principal repayment towards the home loan by furnishing a proof of same under section 80C. When you take a home loan, you can claim it under section 80C by furnishing the proof, and you can also claim tax benefits under section 24 towards the interest payment on your home loan up to rupees 2 lakh in the financial year. The interest paid on the home loan can be claimed up to 2 lakh in the financial year. And in case of medical insurance premium, you can claim a deduction of rupees up to 25,000 in a financial for medical insurance premium, provided the installment is for you, your spouse, and your dependent children as per section 80D, and rupees 30,000 if age of insured is 60 years or more. And the next one is the another component of salary, pension. How the pension is computed, the commutation of pension. When an employee receives a lump sum payment in lieu of pension which would not have otherwise received in monthly is called commutation of pension. When an employee receives lump sum amount when he retires, that can be called as commutation of pension otherwise received in monthly. Rather than receiving the monthly installments, he receives the lump sum amount at once. That can be called as commutation of pension. The commuted value of pension is taxable in the following manner. Now we discuss how the pension is taxable, how the commuted value of pension is taxable. For commuted pension, if he is a government employee, it is fully exempted, and for commuted pension, if he is a non-government employee, that is partially exempted. And if the pension is uncommuted, for both government and non-government employees, it is fully taxable. And in case of non-government employees, if he is receiving gratuity, 1/3 of commuted value of whole pension is exempted. 1/3 of commuted value of whole pension is exempted, and if he is not receiving gratuity, half of the commuted value of whole pension is exempted. And in case of non-government employees, it is about non-government employees. If he is receiving gratuity, 1/3 of commuted value of whole pension is exempted. 1/3 of commuted value, and if he is not receiving gratuity, half of the commuted value is exempted and another half is taxable. Then what is gratuity? Gratuity is a lump sum amount paid by the employer to the employee as a token of appreciation for the service they have provided towards the company. It is a lump sum amount paid by the employer to the employee for his service done, for his appreciation. As a appreciation, the employer provides him the lump sum amount that can be called as gratuity. It is important to know what are eligibility and the amount of gratuity that an employee will receive. Tax treatment of gratuity. How the gratuity is treated for tax. For government employees, it is fully exempted, and for non-government employees, we divide into two types: employees covered under the Payment of Gratuity Act and the employees not covered under the Payment of Gratuity Act. In case of employees covered under Gratuity Act, we do this following computation. First we calculate 15 days salary based on salary lost or drawn for every completed year of service or part therein excess of 6 months or 6 months. First we calculate 15 days of salary of lost on for every completed year of the service, and or the amount of 20 lakh or amount of actual gratuity received. In these three, whichever is less, which is the least, that is exempted from tax. And in case of employees not covered under Gratuity Act, half month's average salary for every completed year of service is calculated, and then the amount of 20 lakh or actual gratuity received, whichever is least, is exempted from tax. And the components of salary when employee is covered under the Payment of Gratuity Acts are salary and dearness allowance, and in case of not covered under Gratuity Act, salary plus dearness allowance in terms of employment plus commission for fixed percent of sales. And the pay structure. So guys, that is about the pension and the commutation of pension. And the next one is the pay structure. The employer may bifurcate the salary into exempted perquisites and allowance. By such bifurcation, one of the salary structure into tax-free perquisites and allowances, which are partly exempt and partly taxable, will help to reduce the incidence of tax of the employee with no extra cost to employer. That how the structure is to be paid. That is, when the employer bifurcates the salary into exempted perquisites and allowance, and such bifurcation salary structure into tax-free perquisites and allowances, which are partly exempted and partly taxable, helps to reduce the incidence of tax to the employee. First, when it is asked to the employee whether he needs perquisites or allowances, in this case we have to decide, he have to choose, he have to opt the best one through which he can save the incidence of more tax. And in case of perquisites and allowances, perquisites versus allowances, whenever there is an option for employee to make a choice between allowances and perquisites, the employee should analyze the incidence of tax in both cases. First, he should analyze the incidence tax of tax. When he receives perquisites, how much tax he have to bear, and in case of when he receives allowance, how much tax is to be paid. He have to analyze the incidence of tax in both cases and opt for the which minimizes the incidence of tax. And in case of medical allowances versus reimbursement of medical allowances is fully taxable, but reimbursement of medical expenses, that is, after the expenses are made, the employer provides him the expenses what he had spent in return. In case of reimbursement of medical expenses, if he is spent medical expenses, if he is taken treatment in government hospital, it is totally exempted, and in case of private hospitals, it is exempted up to 15,000. Thus, the scheme of reimbursement is better than the scheme of medical allowance that he can get exemption limit. And in case of leave travel concession versus leave travel allowance, LTC versus LTA, leave travel concession is fully exempted and leave travel allowances is fully taxable. Therefore, obviously, the employee should opt for leave travel concession rather than the leave travel allowances. And in case of monetary versus non-monetary benefits, where income under the head salaries including all monetary benefits but excluding non-monetary benefits which does not exceed 50,000 rupees, the perquisites of such value should not be charged to tax. In case of non-monetary benefits, when the perquisites are not exceeds the amount of 50,000, they cannot be charged to tax. Thus, employee should opt for non-monetary benefit to minimize the incidence of tax. So guys, this is all about today's video, and the others, income from house property, capital gains, and income from other sources, the plans what the individual should make to avoid tax burden can be discussed in our next video. Please, if you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe my channel and tap on bell icon for daily updates and notifications. If you like this video, press on like button and share as much possible, as much maximum you can. Thank you.